So I'm making this video because in the future I'm going to go cop watching into the courts and have all kinds of fun and cause them all kinds of trouble, and there's going to come times where, you know, my style is such where I'm just a more chill, like laughing type dude. I'm not angry, I'm not annoying, I'm not instigating, I'm not escalating. I mean, unless one of these cops comes at me, that is, but, you know, if all other things are equal, I'm chill. So we're going to have some conversations. They're probably going to be cut off, interrupted. There's going to be pressure, other cops, recording going on, you know, whatever's going on. And I wanted to make a video that could at least get out what I got to say to this individual cop, not the police, but this individual cop. So I'm going to give him the name of my channel and the title of a video on a business card, hand it to him. And if you're here listening to it, that's how you got here. So here it is, just as quick and direct as I can, so I don't waste any of your time. Alright, it's like this. You see this picture here? This is just kind of my little symbol I'm looking at while I'm making this video, as if I'm talking to a cop. Alright, I'm going to go over a few things in it, and just to inform you as far as the perspectives that people like me are coming from, and what drives us, and what we actually use to come to the conclusions that we do. Alright, so let me get right into it. I don't make any claims, okay? I don't accuse anybody of anything. I don't say, hey, this Constitution this, and this Supreme Court precedent that, and my rights, and you took an oath, and you're a public servant, and I'm the I don't say any of this stuff. All I do is clarify what the police are doing and saying how they're acting by using very basic logic, very non-controversial ethics, the real easy type stuff, and actual reality, observable, objective, manifested reality. Okay? Alright, that's all it is. Okay, so it's like this. You know, you've got a badge and a gun and a uniform and a career, quote unquote, and a paycheck and pressures, and like every guy out there, and maybe you got a family, maybe you don't, whatever. But let's admit one thing first. You're not interested in being completely fair and balanced here. You're biased toward your position because you are a cop that's getting a paycheck. I would call it a bribe, but you're going to think of it as a paycheck, right? I am not going to look at this with complete and total objectivity, because as someone who resists people trying to inflict nonviolent, victimless criminal charges against innocent people, I am obviously in favor of my position. Alright, now that that's on the table, here's where I'm coming from. You're a quote-unquote law enforcement officer, right? You're trained in the law, right? And you're supposed to obey the law, and others are supposed to obey your lawful orders, right? So, as just some average guy out there in the world, I go, that's interesting. That's a lot of power in that word. What is law? Let me look it up according to them. What's their definition of it? Where did that definition come from? And I'm not going to argue semantics. This is super simple and super quick. All right. There is no rule written down in all of U.S. legislation and the whole history of it that says, this is U.S. law number 1, here's the rule written out. U.S. law number 2, here's the rule written out. At the federal, state, county, local level, whichever way you want to go, they do not say U.S. law number 1, subsection D, paragraph Charlie, point 2. It's nothing like that. There are no laws. Okay, there are statutes and codes. You're probably most familiar with the criminal code. There are statutes and codes, words written down that say this is a statute and here's the rule. This is the part of the code and here's the rule that must be obeyed. That we both agree with. But there is no law. So the word law is just a fuzzy, vague pointer word that says, hey everyone, we want you to be brainwashed since you were born to respect this fuzzy, vague word called law. Like, oh, it's against the law, and oh, they're a lawbreaker, and oh, that's an outlaw. So if there is no definition on your side of the game as to what a law is there a definition on my side of the game as to what it is? Well, yes. And what do I use to reach this conclusion? Of course, logic, ethics, and actual reality. And it's this. The closest definition I can find, the most accurate definition I can conclude of what law actually means is the opinion of the senior most ranking bar member in the room or conjecture as to what that opinion might be in the future. The opinion of the senior most ranking bar member in the room, namely a judge, or conjecture as to what that opinion will be in the future, mainly by you, the cop on the street. So to you, that's law. What the judge says is going to have the power. Doesn't matter what a cop says, doesn't matter what a lawyer says. What the judge says has the power. Therefore, the laws go through judges and that whole chain of command. That's law. What a judge says is law. Their arbitrary opinion, quite often, is actually what is pointed at with the word law. Now, that's just one conclusion I'm coming to. I just want to bounce it off you to see what you think about that one, because I can't find a more accurate definition. If you can, I'm all ears. Okay, so I'm not saying, oh, I'm 100% right. All right, let's move on. Now, these statutes and codes, all right, they encompass everything that quote-unquote citizens, I'll get into that later, but are supposed to obey, right? So what's a statute or code? All right, it's all these rules written down. Now, obviously, they weren't on the Constitution, so the claim is, by people on your side of the fence, that the Constitution authorized, something that didn't even attempt to be a contract, by the way, authorized other people in the future to write down future rules. We called them statutes and codes, and to enforce them and inflict them upon the population, whether or not they agree with it or not. No matter who they voted for or whether they wanted to vote at all. All will obey these statutes and codes. Okay, no problem. See, I'm looking at objective reality, and I got some questions about that for you, Mr. Cop on the street who I had an encounter with in the future. What is it, actually, that makes your statutes and codes applicable to me? To me, right here, right now. Now, you would think that would be written down somewhere. Well, it's applicable because of this other reason over here. And quite often, let's get honest, the thought process is, if you break one of our statutes and codes within geographical, physical boundaries that we set up, we claim jurisdiction over an area, and we claim the ability to impose upon you whether you like it or volunteer for it or not. You make up the borders, and then you say we claim all power within these borders. But you don't actually have a document that claims that. See, there's no document that actually says, written by any lawyer or judge anywhere, that says all of human beings that exist within certain boundaries are bound to the statutes and codes of the government in place within those boundaries because we say so, or just because, or for any reason whatsoever. They just ignore it altogether. Now, if you can find it, Mr. Cop, please point it out to me in the comments section. I'll be happy to look it up. But I know it doesn't exist because after years of giving judges and lawyers and cops hell over this fact, not a one of them in the entire country, and other countries actually, has been able to provide said document that says our jurisdictional authority comes from this fact. It doesn't say that. They can't point to the Constitution because the Constitution, again, wasn't even attempting to be a contract, and it certainly wasn't talking to people who live 240 years from now, as if they need to obey what we say here, or what comes from what we say here. Us slave-owning elitists here, right? I'm trying to keep this super simple. You think your statutes and codes apply because they simply apply. Well, nowhere in the statutes or codes does it say that. So I'm not going to be jailed and imposed upon because of another man's opinion. You're a human being, you're flawed. Your opinions don't rule over me any more than my opinions rule over you. And obviously it's logical that something that can be asserted with zero evidence, factual evidence whatsoever, can also be refuted with zero factual evidence whatsoever. You don't get to be right just because you've got the gun. Or do you? Now, if a cop actually said to me, look, man, we don't have it written down anywhere about our jurisdiction applies to you because you're in a geographical physical area. It's just obvious. And you know what? When it comes down to it, you're right, it's the guns. We have the numbers, we have the force, we can make what we want happen. and you are going to be under our jurisdiction. Now, if they would just say that, that would be honest. But I have yet to come across any bureaucrat, administrator, lawyer, politician, judge, any of them, cop, any of them, that have admitted that. None of them have ever said, we have jurisdiction because might makes right. We have the monopoly on power. We the bribed men wearing costumes and badges and guns who think they're in charge of everything. We've told them that and trained them that. There's too much pressure on them to rebel, otherwise they're risking their pension and all their social pressures along the way. What will their family think? You can't have an attack of logic, ethics, and actual reality and truth. You can't do that. Cognitive dissonance would be troubling at best and shattering at worst. I've seen it on all sides of the spectrum. Alright? All of the nonviolent victimless charges that you bring through the prosecutor's office, they're all legalized crimes. They're the work of evil men. And you're persecuting innocent human beings. If people have committed no crime and there's no victim, there's no reason for you to get involved. Police only need to deal with people who are actually causing a problem. Theft, rape, assault, murder, extortion. Right? Crimes with actual victims. Harm is being done. Now, I'm not pointing at common law or the Constitution. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just using logic. You can't say you owe me $100 if you wear red shoes on the second Tuesday of every month. That's illogical. Now, if you're going to just rule with the gun, then just admit it, and we can go from there. But you can't. Do you understand? Go ask anyone, anywhere, hey, these statutes and codes that we enforce, where does it say that they apply to the people within the borders that we patrol? It doesn't say that anywhere. It doesn't even say in the code that the code applies. It doesn't say in the statute that the statute applies. That's just human opinion. Well, it applies because the bullies a step above at the state says it applies. And you go to the state, oh, the bullies at the Fed, they say it applies. And then the Fed, they probably do some round robin. Well, if you don't like the way it applies, you can go run for office or get a bunch of people and vote somebody in who thinks it won't apply, and then you can get your way. And that's the great form of government we've got. But I'm a judge, and it's my job to enforce the laws on the books. This one's on the book. You're sorry you don't like it. Bang. Next case. Now, I don't know if you fully, maybe you realize this already and you're just finding entertainment and listening to some random inhabitant of these lands explain it. But for many of you police who are listening to this, it will be news. And I don't know how else to tell you other than just flatly. The statutes and codes do not apply. Now, here's further, right? Some of you have been in the military. If you haven't, you certainly have friends and coworkers who have been. In the military, of course, when you sign all these documents to in process, one of those documents is the element of jurisdiction. It is a document that says, hey, you're going to be under the UCMJ, Unified Uniform, I can't remember, a code of military justice, UCMJ. And you sign it. Hey, I give my consent, and if I break these rules, I'll be punished by them. Great, no problem, sign me up. Now, of course, ethically, that shouldn't hold any weight either, because you don't actually explain this to all those people who sign that document. It's not like they have their own lawyer to explain to them what they're actually volunteering for. So it's still fraudulent. But even if they did understand, that is addressing the element of jurisdiction. International courts address the element of jurisdiction. Diplomats who come over here and have diplomatic immunity, they're within your borders, and yet you have no jurisdiction over them. Where's that written down? They don't have to put up with your nonsense because some other country says, oh, there are diplomats, so therefore you don't have jurisdiction over them, but anyone else, fair game. What about members of the military? Will they be scooped up by their own base and have whatever issues they cause adjudicated by a military judge or by a civilian judge? Like when I was in the military and I got divorced, they just kicked me off the base and said, hey, we're in whatever state that you've never been to before and doesn't have a damn thing to do with you or your wife or your kid or where you're coming from. But it's going to have jurisdiction over you. It's going to tell you how much of your paycheck you're going to lose. It's going to say how much of your kid you're going to see. It's going to say where your ex-wife can move to and take such kid. And there's not a thing you can do about it, unless you want to go apeshit crazy and murder the mother of your child. That doesn't seem like a good option. And yet, I had signed a document that says I was in the UCMJ. The civilian court pulled me out and said, no, this guy's under our jurisdiction now when it's convenient for him to be under our jurisdiction. When we're done with him, we'll give him back to the military. Military, and back, there he is. Now he's in your jurisdiction, UCMJ. Alright, people are learning this, and they're not going to put up with it any longer. I mean, it's only a matter of time before people figure this out. And if they don't actively fight, which many won't because they're just stupid sheep. You and I both agree that most of humanity is dumb as a post. And that neither of us belong to that majority, oddly enough. But even if they don't fight directly because they're sheep or scared or bribed, they still know it. And this has bigger implications, and I'll go there now. Gosh, which way should I go? Taxes, right? Taxes are all written down in documentation that never addresses whether or not these statutes and codes apply. They just enforce it with the will of a gun. So, Mr. Cop, you rule by your gun. It's might makes right. You allow no competition for security services. There's only one. There's only one power structure, and it rules with an iron fist. How do you expect us to be happy about, oh, I got to go this document, and this document, and this document, show my papers, so this person will not think they have comply or die authority to drag my ass into a prison cell until such time as a judge is ready to see me the next day, no matter what's going on in my life, because I didn't produce a paper? Let's look at one of these pieces of paper, known as proof of insurance. Now, obviously, you're so crooked, you've actually linked private companies to government resources so that just by looking at a license plate, you can get a record of whether or not that car has insurance. Now, what is insurance? It is a forced gamble that the quote-unquote men and women in power and government force people to make. They force us to make a gamble that says, we'll pay a little bit of money betting that we will get in an accident. And if we don't get in a big accident, you win the bet, you get to keep our money. But if we do get in a big, huge accident, you lose the bet, you got to pay us, cover our medical bills and the property damage. The state inflicts this forced gamble so that people who have more money don't have to radically increase their insurance premiums to cover all of the uninsured drivers out there. It's just, we don't want to have a huge bill, so we're going to spread it out to everybody so that we have to pay so much less. We can't have the state taking on the burden of all these trauma cases for all these car accidents. People don't have insurance, and now the state has to pick up the tab for it. We can't have that. We'll go broke. So in order to maintain their power, they inflict a nonviolent, victimless criminal charge on people for not carrying insurance. It's a forced gamble. And like a Nazi, you demand that we have it. Oh, you're not being responsible. You're not obeying the law. It's the law. If you want to have a driver's license, you got to have insurance. The license itself. Have you looked at the document? Look at all the fine print. Look at what you're forced to claim. They force you to lie and say, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with this, I agree to this, I agree to this, here's my signature. You can't even sign it differently. If you don't do all of that, they will not give you a license. And if you don't have a license, obviously you can't drive, or you just enter into this endlessly escalating threat of violence to get you to comply, or you are screwed. Longer jail sentences, bigger fines. They can take your career from you, they'll take your car from you, they'll throw you in jail and take your freedom from you, and if you say no with enough force, they'll take your life from you. Now, how can any police officer with a straight face look themselves in the mirror and think they have a shred of honor? You harm innocent human beings, men, women, and children. The weakest are the most vulnerable, the elderly, the undereducated, the impoverished, the abused, the neglected, the mentally ill. Need I go on? Does that not bother you? Is there no shred of you that desires freedom from that? Is it just too late? Oh, you're just stuck in this and you just can't get out? none of them have an answer to this. Shouldn't a lawyer have an answer? Shouldn't a judge certainly have an answer? Because they're both way ahead of you on the hierarchy of power. You know it. They don't have an answer to this. They don't train you about law because they don't want you to know this. They don't want you to find this out. That you're enforcing tyranny. You are a domestic terrorist. Many of you have been just led to believe that you're the good guy, and you're not. Unless you're actually taking on actual violent crime, you're a menace to society, and you deserve to be in prison for what you're inflicting upon innocent people. I don't care if it's at the beck and call of powerful people. It's still wrong. Now, if you just want to go about your life anyway, then just admit it, man. Just admit it. Might makes right. We rule, and that's the way it's going to be. And if it wasn't, you wouldn't enjoy all this beautiful country of America with all of its freedoms, and we don't have terrorists over here, and all these other justifications you imagine you have to feel necessary when you're not. You're beyond unnecessary. You're a menace. You're a danger. You're a threat to human dignity and to the power of the individual over the collective will. You don't think such things because you're not taught to explore such things. You just sweep it all under the rug so you can just go to work and do your really stressful job that you don't even get to see a shrink enough over. You're cold. You don't care. The ego is there. You will be obeyed. You've got your flaws and they come through your job performance, if that's what you want to call it. And all I'm doing is sitting here going, look, man, do you hear me barking at you? Do you hear me calling you bad names? No, I'm not doing any of that. All I'm saying is, what are you doing? What are you doing? Leave that dude alone. Oh, he doesn't have a permission slip to travel in a motorized car or truck from point A to point B. He doesn't have that? Why don't you look at Black's Law Dictionary? That's how you decipher. That's how you decode legalese. Because they hide binding, damning words within common English. And people don't know. The police steal more through asset forfeiture than actual criminals do. Look it up. You are bigger thieves than actual criminals. And most all of that is for nonviolent victimless crimes. Oh, you know what would happen if we didn't clean up the heroin and the meth around? There are other countries that have dealt with their drug problem differently, and they don't involve a drug war where criminal charges result. They result in medical intervention and other options, humanitarian options. Oh, well, the world's tough and I gotta guard the wall. You're not appreciating me. You don't know what it'd be like. You're a pussy. Da, 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 da. I was in the military. I'm a realist. I have an idea of how bad it can get out there. But going after nonviolent victimless crimes has nothing to do with keeping the bad guy barbarians at the gates. It's just extortion. Because they just can't get enough money. Because they can't spend it quickly enough. They need everybody to be undereducated. They need everybody to be disempowered, to be impoverished, to be without hope. That's how you farm human beings. And you're just tending the garden. You're nothing to them. You'll never be anything to them. You're just a dumb cop in their minds. If you had any kind of brain, you wouldn't have been a cop. You would have been something more like a lawyer or a businessman. Right? Involved in the stock market. A mover and a shaker. Someone who recognizes true power and knows what to do with it. The real power, not your street level ant crawling power. Your statutes and codes don't apply to anyone. No lawyer can state how they do. No judge can state how they do. Because they don't. It's not written down anywhere. If it is, I'm all ears and eyes. I'm looking. It should say something like the statutes and codes apply because of reason X. That's what I'm looking for. Reason X does not exist. They don't even address it. But they do in the military courts. Why do the military courts address it? Why wouldn't the civilian side of the game do it? The reason why the civilian side of the game doesn't do it is because they can't. Because then they'd have to inform everybody, hey, you have a choice. Do you want to consent to our rules? Nobody would say yes. And so they don't. They just presume it. So I know you're going to go about your job. I know the words you hear here aren't going to prevent you from chasing that pension, and I know I'm not going to have any effect on you, but I want you to hear what you really are, just with the basic logic, ethics, and actual reality. You're just a thief. You're a violent thug. You're a gang member. You're just dressed up in a blue uniform with a little gold star, the same they used to give out to me when I was in 2nd grade, and a gun. Taser, mace, club. You're a thug. It's all you are, and that's all you'll ever be unless you educate yourself out of this dead end and rejoin civilized society. Regain your humanity. Because right now you are lost. You are part of the problem, and there is coming a solution. And you won't like it. And by the time you realize it, it'll be too late. So when you ask someone, hey, license, registration, insurance, please, I want you to know, we don't need to pay rent on our property in order to keep it. If we bought it, it's ours. You don't get to charge rent on every little thing we own so that you get more and more and more money and we get less and less and less. You don't get to force us to make gambles with private insurance companies and then go hand in hand with the private insurance companies so that you can track us down just by looking at our license plate. You know everything about every aspect of our lives. What you're doing is wrong on every level. Your rules do not apply to anyone unless you have factual evidence that they do. And if you don't, you're not a cop. That's not a courthouse. There are no lawyers, and that's not a judge. Do you hear me? You're all just committing extortion, assault, and murder and getting away with it. That's how I feel about you. That's what I think you are because of how you act when I compare those actions to very basic little 10-year-old logic and ethics. Anybody can understand. Hey, should I be able to punch you in the face for no reason on the street? No. All right, there's ethics. Hey, you were going 10 miles over the speed limit. I'm going to flip on my lights, and we all know what that means. If you don't pull over, it's felony time, it's race time. You must pull over. And when you do, a man with a gun is going to approach you from the rear where you can't see, and he's going to be scared, and he's going to be looking for your hands. And if you don't produce the right papers, like this is in some kind of Nazi Germany, your ass is going to jail. And if you don't like it, he will kill you over it. Because you will go to jail. No amount of force from you will prevent that. Sure, you might pull out a shotgun and grease that cop, but he's got a cop cam and you're going to get got. You don't have a choice. When you ticket somebody, you introduce them to that endlessly escalating threat of state violence. And the accountability for that is on you. We have your names. We have your badge numbers. But see, we have far more. We have your home addresses. We have the names and addresses of your family members. We have your cell phone numbers. We have your email addresses. We know where you work. So far, people have just not quite coalesced enough with enough unity to really strike back. You do not want to be a police officer. You need to get out of the force. And if you stay in, I highly recommend that you get into a position where you can only chase legitimate bad guys. Murderers, people who commit assault. Alright? Imagine what I have to say to the lawyers and the judges, because I'm about to make those videos. So this is where I'm coming from. Whether you're a cop, sheriff, highway patrol, bailiff, I don't care. Your badge doesn't mean shit. It's a lie. There's no authority behind it whatsoever. You rule because you have the numbers. You have the stolen money that buys all the guns and pays for all your uniforms and paychecks. And that's it. And that's all. And that's the way it is in most areas of the world. And if you justify your acts by saying, oh, that's just the way it is everywhere, that's a logical fallacy. That's an error in logic. It doesn't matter how many people are being evil out there. It does not justify you doing the same. So you have a good time looking in the mirror. Half of you who listen to this, I think you'll be laughing. You're mentally insane. You're delusional. But you're functional. And they love you that way. And they reward you for that way. And they promote you in certain ways because of it. I mean, do your children know this? What will happen if your children find this out? What if just your family finds this out about you? You're part of the problem. You predate upon innocent men, women, and children. You're a predator. I can defend myself against you. That's why I have zero fear of you. But the vast majority of them, as we both know, are completely powerless. They say dumb things, they do dumb things in court, they have no idea what they're doing, and they're completely hopeless. But I'm not. You have not convinced all of society that you're something special. I don't believe your religion. I don't believe your statutes and codes. I don't believe in your constitution. I don't believe in your government. I am ungovernable. No gun will change my mind. No amount of force will change my mind. They don't train you in the law for a reason. They want you stupid for a reason. And when you leave the room, they think of you as some stupid idiot who doesn't even know anything about the law when he claims to be a law enforcement officer. You send and create charges for the prosecutor, and they wreak havoc. They cause chaos in people's lives. You break up families. You separate children from their natural parents. You impoverish people. You have them lose their jobs, lose their homes, lose their cars, lose their hope, and sometimes lose their very sanity. But hey, you've got a pension coming, right? It is extremely difficult for me to feel nothing but disgust for all police everywhere. And to think how pathetic and cruel and merciless you all are in your ignorance, in your pride. But I won't. I don't get angry because you know how to deal with anger. You troll people with anger. Not me. I laugh because I'm more powerful than you. A live streaming camera and an audience out in the globe, people watching live, is more powerful than your gun. I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth. I'm going to be all over the place. And our numbers are growing. And we're going to be getting a lot more effective. None of this annoying, just agitating, paparazzi-style harassment. No, we're going to be getting on point. If we say anything at all. It's a huge bureaucracy. They screw you from the jump. They've got so many rules and regulations for you to follow, but when it comes for the moment for you to squeeze the trigger, how are you supposed to know if it's justified or not? They set up the rules in a way to screw you if they want to distance themselves from you if they need to. There is no redress of grievance. There is no state. There is no citizen. There is no reciprocal agreement of loyalty for protection. You offer no protection. Even the Supreme Court has said you're not liable to protect anyone. These people are sheep, and they don't accept the responsibility of their own security. And that's all I have to say about that.